For 200 years, humanity talked. The galaxy ignored them. Then humanity stopped talking. And the galaxy learned to fear that silence. The Great Council Chamber floated in the darkness between stars. A massive ring of reinforced titanium and crystalline viewports spinning slowly in the void around Concord Prime. Inside the chamber stretched 300 meters across. Circular tiers rose like the interior of an ancient amphitheater. Each tier held seats for the delegates of 847 species. The chamber had stood for 12,000 years. It had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. It had brokered peace between species that had warred for centuries. It had seen triumph and tragedy, celebration and sorrow. But it had never known silence like this. Ambassador Seraphine of the Corvani stood in her delegation section. Her feathered crest lay flat against her skull. Her golden eyes swept across the chamber. She was 45 years old by Corvani reckoning. She had served on the council for 2 decades. She had seen countless debates, endless arguments, diplomatic storms that seemed to shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. None of it compared to the emptiness before her now. The human section was vacant. 23 seats arranged in perfect rows. Not a single occupant. The holographic displays that usually flickered with human data streams stood dark and silent. The translation nodes that had carried human voices to every corner of the chamber for 200 years broadcasted only static. Seraphine felt her secondary hearts beating faster. Something was wrong, terribly fundamentally wrong. She turned to the delegate beside her. The Palaxian representative floated in his containment sphere, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with bioluminescent blue light. His species communicated through color patterns that the translation matrix converted to speech. "Has anyone heard from the human delegation?" Seraphine asked. Her voice came out rougher than she intended. The translator rendered her clicks and whistles into the common tongue. The Palaxian's colors shifted to uncertain purple. "No contact. All their communication channels are closed. We assumed they were simply running late." But the humans were never late. In 200 years of council membership, they had never missed a single session. They arrived early. They stayed late. They talked and talked and talked. Some species found it annoying. Others found it helpful. Everyone had gotten used to it. The empty seats looked wrong, like missing teeth in a smile, like a wound in the fabric of normal reality. Council Director Archon called the meeting to order. He was from an avian species, tall and elegant. Golden feathers covered his body. His sharp eyes could see across great distances. He had been director for 50 years. He prided himself on maintaining order and tradition. "We begin today's session with..." Archon paused, his gaze fixed on the empty human section, his feathers ruffled with visible unease. "Does anyone know the whereabouts of the human delegation?" Silence answered him. 847 species, thousands of delegates. Not one had an answer. Archon's feathers flattened against his body. "Very well, we shall proceed. First order of business." "Director." The voice came from the upper tiers, deep and resonant, filled with barely contained power. Warlord Draken of the Thranic Empire rose from his seat. He was massive even by Thranic standards. His body stretched nearly 3 meters tall. Thick scales covered his frame. They gleamed like dark metal under the chamber lights. Orange fire burned in his eyes. Each of his forearms ended in talons that could crush steel. Draken was 400 years old. He had conquered 47 worlds in his lifetime. He commanded the largest military fleet in known space. His empire controlled vital trade routes. Dozens of species depended on Thranic protection or trade agreements. He was by any measure one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Before we proceed," Draken said, his translator rendering his growls into common speech, "I wish to address the continued absence of the human delegates. They were summoned regarding the incident 3 months ago." Seraphine's stomach tightened. The incident. Everyone knew what he meant, even though few wanted to discuss it. 3 months ago, a human colony ship had been traveling through disputed space. The ship was called the Bright Tomorrow. It carried 15,000 civilians. Families, children, elderly people, all heading to a new world to start fresh lives. The Thranic Empire claimed the ship violated their territorial boundaries. The boundaries had never been formally recognized by the Council. But the Thranics claimed them nonetheless. Thranic warships had fired on the colony ship. No warning, no attempt at communication, just sudden, overwhelming violence. The Bright Tomorrow had been destroyed completely. All 15,000 humans died, their bodies scattered across the void, their dreams turned to frozen corpses and debris. Humanity had been furious. Their ambassador, a stern woman named Elena Hayes, had demanded an emergency council session. She presented evidence, testimony, data logs from the destroyed ship's final moments. She asked for justice. She asked for accountability. She asked for the Thranic officers responsible to be held to the laws that supposedly governed all species equally. The council had debated for 2 weeks. The Thranic Empire was powerful. They had the largest military fleet in known space, 2,400 warships, battle stations throughout their territory, weapons that could crack planets. Many council members depended on Thranic protection. Others relied on trade agreements. Some simply feared what would happen if they made an enemy of such a massive military power. In the end, the council had ruled. The incident was regrettable but justified. The bright tomorrow had been in disputed territory. The Thranics would pay a small fine for the misunderstanding. No officers would be punished. No territory would be returned to neutral status. Seraphine remembered that day clearly. She had watched Ambassador Hayes stand in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the council's decision. The human delegation had been silent during the vote. They had not shouted. They had not argued. Hayes had simply looked around at all of them. Seraphine still saw that expression in her nightmares. It was not anger. It was something colder, something final. Hayes had been 52 years old. Gray streaked through her dark hair. Lines marked her face around her eyes and mouth. She had served as ambassador for 20 years. She had negotiated hundreds of treaties. She had mediated countless disputes. She had believed in the system, in the council, in the possibility of justice through law rather than force, and the council had shown her that belief was misplaced. "We understand perfectly," Hayes had said. Her voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely devoid of emotion. Then she had walked out. Every human delegate had followed her. They filed out in silence. Not a word, not a protest, just quiet, orderly departure. They had not returned. Now Draken stood in the council chamber. His scales gleamed, his eyes burned, his voice filled the space with arrogant certainty. "The Thranic delegates are not required to attend," Council Director Archon said carefully. "The matter has been resolved according to council law." "Exactly," Draken rumbled. "The matter is closed, yet the humans sulk like children denied a toy. Their absence is disrespectful to this council." A few species murmured agreement, but many more stayed silent. Seraphine noticed that the smaller species looked nervous, the ones who depended on council protection for their survival. The meeting continued, but Seraphine could not focus. Her mind kept returning to the empty seats, to Hayes's final words, to the silence that had settled over humanity like a shroud. After the meeting ended, Seraphine returned to her private quarters on the station. She accessed her personal communication system. She tried to contact the human embassy. The system connected, but instead of a person, an automated message played. "The human diplomatic corps is currently unavailable. We thank you for your patience." Seraphine tried again. Same message. She tried contacting human trade stations, human border outposts, human scientific expeditions scattered throughout the galaxy. Every single channel gave the same automated response. It was as if humanity had simply unplugged themselves from the galactic community overnight. Seraphine had a friend, a scholar named Marcus from the amphibious Aquarius species. Marcus had spent 40 years studying human culture and history. If anyone could explain what was happening, it would be him. She found Marcus in his research quarters. Holographic displays surrounded him. They showed human historical documents. Earth languages scrolled past in streams of incomprehensible text. Marcus's large eyes looked tired. His usually bright blue skin had faded to worried gray. He was 58 years old. He had devoted most of his adult life to understanding humanity. "Marcus," Seraphine said, "what is happening with the humans?" Marcus did not look away from his displays. "They have stopped talking." "Yes, I noticed. But why? Surely they will come back once they have cooled down." Now Marcus did look at her. His expression made Seraphine step back involuntarily. "Seraphine," Marcus said quietly, "do you know what humans do when they stop talking?" No. Neither did I, not really." Marcus gestured to his displays. "I have been studying their history non-stop for 3 months, ever since they left the council. I have been looking at their wars, their conflicts, their patterns of behavior." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "When humans stop talking, Seraphine, it is not because they have given up. It is because they have decided that talking is finished." "I do not understand." Marcus pulled up a document. It showed a map of ancient Earth, borders drawn between hundreds of separate nations. Before humans reached the stars, they were divided into hundreds of separate groups. These groups fought constantly. But there were rules. Ambassadors, negotiations, treaties. Even enemies would talk to each other. He pulled up another document. But there were times when one nation would recall all their ambassadors from another nation. Close all diplomatic channels. Stop all communication. Marcus's eyes held depths of fear Seraphine had never seen in him before. Do you know what that meant? Seraphine shook her head. It meant war was coming. Not just a small conflict, total war. When humans stopped talking, it meant they had decided that words were useless. It meant they were going to act instead. But the humans have always been peaceful, Seraphine protested. Yes, they argue and debate constantly, but they have never started a war. They have been the most diplomatic species in the entire council. Exactly, Marcus said. His skin flashed with agitated colors. They have been diplomatic. They have talked and talked and talked for 200 years. But have you asked yourself why? Why would a species be so insistent on talking, on negotiating, on finding peaceful solutions? Seraphine thought about it. Because they value peace. Or because they fear what happens when they stop. Marcus pulled up more documents, battle records, casualty reports, technological specifications. Humans spent 10,000 years on their homeworld, perfecting the art of killing each other. They have had more wars than most species have had generations. They invented hundreds of ways to destroy their enemies. They studied war like we study science. He zoomed in on a particular document. Their greatest military leaders are remembered like artists and philosophers. Sun Tzu, Alexander, Napoleon, Patton, names that echo through their history. Seraphine felt cold despite the temperature-controlled environment. But they chose to leave that behind when they joined the galactic community. Did they? Marcus pulled up a display showing the human military. Look at their fleet. By council standards, it is small. They have only a few hundred warships compared to thousands for the Thranics. He highlighted certain sections of data. But have you noticed that human ships are never where they say they will be during inspection? What do you mean? I mean that for the past 70 years, every time the council has conducted fleet inspections, humans report their ship positions and allow inspectors aboard. But I have been analyzing the data. Marcus brought up patrol schedules and inspection reports. The ships that get inspected are always the same ones, and there are gaps, long gaps in the patrol schedules that do not make sense. Weeks where dozens of ships are listed as in maintenance simultaneously. You think they have been hiding their true fleet size? I do not know, Marcus admitted, but I am afraid to find out. He closed his displays. I requested an emergency council session to present my findings. I was denied. Denied? Why, bomb? Because Warlord Draken and the Thranic representatives convinced the council that I am being alarmist, that the human silence is just a tantrum that will pass. Marcus's skin flickered with frustrated colors. They do not understand. The humans are not sulking. They are preparing. That night, Seraphine could not sleep. She kept thinking about Marcus's words. She kept seeing those empty seats in the council chamber. She kept remembering the expression on Hayes' face 3 months ago. At midnight station time, every alarm on Concord Prime began to scream. Seraphine rushed to her communication console. Emergency broadcasts flooded in from every direction. She pulled up the main channel. A human communication beacon had reactivated. These beacons had been placed throughout the galaxy over the past 2 centuries. They created a network that allowed faster communication across vast distances. They had been built and maintained by humanity as a gift to the galactic community. For 3 months, they had been dark, silent, dead. Now one had turned back on, but it was not broadcasting messages or data. It was broadcasting coordinates and a countdown. 47 days, 3 hours, 17 minutes. Seraphine stared at the display. The coordinates pointed to a location in Thranic space. The countdown ticked relentlessly downward. What would happen when it reached 0? Within an hour, the entire galaxy was awake, asking the same question. Analysts tried to determine what the coordinates meant. They pointed to empty space near a Thranic military outpost, but there was nothing there. No planets, no stations, nothing but void. Council Director Archon called an emergency meeting. The council chamber filled with frightened delegates demanding answers. Warlord Draken stood before them. He looked less confident than usual, but he tried to hide it behind bluster and rage. "This is clearly a threat," Draken announced. His forearms gestured dramatically. "The humans are attempting to intimidate us. We should not give in to their theatrics." But Seraphine noticed that many species were not listening to Draken. They were watching the countdown. It now displayed prominently in the chamber's central hologram. 46 days, 23 hours, 14 minutes. We should try to contact them, suggested a delegate from the Palaxian Collective. Open a dialogue, find out what they want. We have tried, Archon said wearily. Every channel returns the same automated message. The humans are not accepting communication. Then send a ship to human space, another delegate called out. Demand they speak to us. 3 delegations have been sent in the past 3 months, Archon replied. All were met at the border by human patrol ships and turned away. The humans said only one thing. There is nothing to discuss. Return home. The chamber fell silent except for the soft ticking of the countdown. Seraphine found Marcus again after the meeting. He was in his quarters, staring at the countdown display. 46 days, she said. What do you think it means? Marcus did not look away from the screen. I think it means the humans are giving us time. Time for what? To prepare, to evacuate, to say goodbye. He looked at her with his large, sad eyes. When humans went to war with each other on their homeworld, there were sometimes patterns, declarations, warnings, not because they wanted to give their enemies an advantage, but because they wanted their enemies to know that what was coming was not random. It was not cruel. It was justice. Justice for the bright tomorrow, Seraphine whispered. 15,000 dead, and the council said it was justified. Marcus's voice was flat, empty. The humans have decided to show us what justice looks like when you cannot negotiate for it. The days passed. The countdown continued its relentless march toward zero. 40 days, 35 days, 30 days. The galaxy watched. Species made quiet preparations. Trade routes shifted away from Thranic space. Insurance companies stopped covering shipments into the region. Smart ship captains found reasons to be somewhere else. But the Thranic Empire prepared for war. Draken convinced the military high command that the human silence was a sign of weakness. They were hiding, he said. They were afraid. We should take advantage of their fear, Draken argued before the Thranic War Council. Push into their territory. Show them that their tantrums have consequences. The high command agreed. They authorized a scouting mission. 12 Thranic warships would enter human space and investigate the abandoned human colonies that had been discovered. The fleet entered the system that New Vancouver had once occupied. The planet still hung in space, beautiful and blue. Cities stood intact on the surface. But scans confirmed the reports. No humans, just empty buildings and automated systems maintaining the infrastructure. Scan for weapons, the fleet commander ordered. They might have left traps. The scans showed nothing, no weapons, no shields, no defenses at all. Sir, the sensor officer reported, I am picking up something strange in the outer system. Define strange. There are structures, orbital platforms of some kind, but they are not showing up properly on scanners. I am only detecting them because they are blocking starlight. The commander felt a cold chill run down his spine. His scales rippled with involuntary fear response. How many structures? I cannot get an accurate count. The stealth technology is extremely advanced, but based on the sternal occlusion patterns, at least 300 platforms. Possibly more. 300 in one system, a system humans had supposedly abandoned. Back us out, the commander ordered. Slowly, no sudden movements. But as the Thranic fleet began to retreat, every screen suddenly lit up with a message. Text only, no voice, no image. Just words in every galactic language. You are trespassing. Leave now. Do not return. The fleet left. Fast. When they returned to Thranic space, the commander filed a full report. The High Command read it in silence. 300 platforms with stealth technology that should not exist. In a system humans had abandoned. If that was one system, how many platforms did humanity have throughout their territory? Draken read the report. For the first time, he felt something that might have been doubt. The countdown continued. 20 days. 15 days. 10 days. Marcus's research uncovered more disturbing patterns. Humanity had been quietly purchasing materials from all over the galaxy for decades. Rare metals, industrial components, quantum processors. All legal trade. Nothing suspicious. But when Marcus added up the quantities, they did not match human civilian production needs. Where had all those materials gone? He found his answer in a human educational database. It was a history textbook for young humans, designed to teach children about their species' past. One chapter was titled, The Lesson We Must Never Forget. Marcus read it, and he understood. The chapter described humanity's worst wars, the ones where millions died, The ones where entire cities burned. The ones where humans used weapons so terrible that they swore never to use them again. The chapter was required reading for every human child. They were forced to study their own capacity for horror. But the chapter did not end with never again. It ended with something else. We learn these lessons not to feel guilty. We learn them so we understand what we are capable of. We are not monsters, but we can become monsters if we choose to. That choice is our responsibility. The galaxy must never fear us because of what we might do. But if we are ever pushed into a corner, if our families are ever threatened, if justice becomes impossible to find, the galaxy must remember that we know exactly what we are capable of, and we will do what must be done. Marcus showed this to Seraphine. She read it 3 times. They have been teaching their children this for 200 years, she whispered. This is not rage, Marcus said. This is not revenge. They have been preparing for this possibility since the day they joined the galactic community. Preparing for the day the galaxy failed them. The countdown reached 5 days. Reports came in from across the galaxy. Human trading ships had returned to human space. Human diplomats had evacuated all embassies. Human scientific expeditions had abandoned their projects, even long-term studies that had been running for decades. And then someone noticed the shipyards. A freelance journalist found archived footage of human shipyards from 10 years ago. She compared it to recent footage taken by passing merchant vessels. 10 years ago, the shipyards had been building colony ships, cargo haulers, research vessels, standard civilian production. In the recent footage, the shipyards were empty, not inactive, empty. Every ship that had been under construction was gone. Hundreds of vessels just vanished. Either humanity had the fastest shipbuilding operation in galactic history, or they had been building something other than civilian ships and had now moved all of them somewhere else. A military analyst from the Palaxian Collective ran the numbers. If humanity had been secretly converting even 20% of their civilian production to military purposes over the past 20 years, and if those ships were designed for war from the keel up, rather than being retrofitted civilian vessels, the analyst published his estimate, 3,000 warships, maybe more, all designed from the beginning for combat, all crewed by a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare. And every single one of them was now somewhere in human space. Location unknown. The countdown reached 3 days. The council finally agreed to let Marcus present his findings. They gave him a time slot during an emergency session. Marcus stood in the center of the council chamber. 847 species looked down at him. The empty human section loomed to his left like an open wound. I am here to warn you, Marcus began. We have misunderstood humanity fundamentally and dangerously. He showed them everything. The historical patterns, the evacuations, the material purchases, the education system that taught every human child about their capacity for violence, the evidence that humanity had been building a military far larger than anyone suspected. But why, someone called out, if they had this power, why hide it? Why not use it for influence? Because Marcus said humans do not want to be feared. They want to be trusted. They spent 200 years trying to build a galaxy where strength did not matter, where justice could be found through words and laws. They hid their weapons because they hoped never to use them. Then why build them at all? Hope is not certainty, Marcus said quietly. Humans hope for the best, but they prepare for the worst. It is part of their nature. They hoped the galaxy would value justice. They prepared for the possibility that it would not. Draken stood. His massive form radiated anger. This is speculation and fear-mongering. The humans are hiding because they are weak. They know they cannot challenge Thranic might. Then why? Seraphine stood as well, her voice cutting through the chamber. Is your empire mobilizing every warship you have? Why are you pulling forces from every border and massing them in your core systems if the humans are so weak? Why do your actions suggest you are preparing for the fight of your life? Draken's eyes blazed, but he said nothing. Because it was true. The Thranic Empire was quietly preparing for war. They were just not admitting it publicly. Archon raised his hand for silence. Marcus, what do you recommend we do? Contact the humans, apologize, offer to reopen the investigation into the Bright tomorrow. Give them what they asked for in the first place. Justice, Gupamon. The council has already ruled. Then unrule it, Marcus's voice cracked with desperation. Please, the countdown has 3 days left. Whatever humanity has planned, we still have time to stop it, but only if we admit we were wrong. The council debated for 3 hours. Species argued. Accusations flew. Some wanted to give the humans what they asked for. Others refused to show weakness. In the end, they voted. The decision was close. But the answer was no. To reverse their ruling would set a dangerous precedent. It would make the council look weak. It would anger the Thranic Empire. Better to maintain order. Better to stay strong. Better not to give in to threats. Marcus walked out of the chamber. He felt numb. He had tried. He had presented everything. And the council had chosen pride over survival. That night, he received a message on his private communication system. It came from an unknown source. But the encryption signature was human. The message was short. You tried to warn them. Thank you. Get to neutral space before the counter reaches 0. Take anyone you care about. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he began making calls. Seraphine first. Then a few other delegates who had actually listened. Then his family on his homeworld. Pack, he told them. Get on a ship. Get to the neutral zones. Do not ask questions. Just go. The countdown continued its patient march. 2 days. 1 day. 18 hours. The galaxy watched and waited. Still not quite believing that humanity would actually do anything. They were peaceful. They were diplomatic. They would come back to the negotiating table. They always did. But Marcus knew better. And every hour he watched as the number decreased, counting down to the moment when humanity would finally show the galaxy who they really were. The final day arrived. The Thranic Empire had mobilized fully. 2,400 warships now patrolled Thranic core systems. Battle stations activated. Civilian populations in border regions evacuated deeper into Thranic territory. For all their public bravado, the Empire was taking the threat seriously. Warlord Draken stood on the bridge of his flagship. The Dominator was a massive dreadnought. It served as the mobile command center for the Thranic fleet. The ship stretched 3 kilometers long. Its weapons could crack a planet's crust. Its shields could withstand sustained bombardment from an entire battle group. Draken had commanded the Dominator for 200 years. He had conquered worlds from this bridge. He had crushed rebellions. He had made entire species kneel before Thranic might. He stood now surrounded by his command staff. Officers who had served with him for decades. Warriors who had proven themselves in countless battles. But there was something in their eyes Draken had never seen before. Fear. Sir, the sensor officer reported, 10 hours until the countdown reaches 0. All ships maintain defensive positions, Draken ordered. His voice was steady, commanding. The humans will not find us unprepared. But even as he spoke, Draken's eyes kept darting to the tactical display. 3,000 ships, maybe more, with technology that could hide them completely, with capabilities they had never shown. For the first time in 400 years, Warlord Draken wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The countdown ticked down. 6 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour. Every news network in the galaxy broadcast the same image. The countdown, ticking relentlessly toward 0. Marcus sat in his quarters on a neutral space station, far from Thranic territory, far from any conflict zones. His wife sat beside him. She held his hand. What will they do? She asked softly. I do not know exactly, Marcus admitted. But I know it will be precise. Humans do not waste effort. They do not kill unnecessarily. But they will make sure no one ever forgets what happens when you kill their civilians and call it justified. Seraphine watched from her homeworld. She had evacuated Concord Prime 3 days ago. Now she sat with her family, watching the countdown, hoping Marcus was wrong, fearing he was right. On the Dominator's bridge, Draken watched the final minutes tick away. All ships' battle stations, he ordered. Power all weapons, maximum shields. This is not a drill. The Thranic fleet snapped to readiness. 2,400 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in known space. Every sensor array pointed outward. Every weapon charged and ready. The countdown reached 1 minute, 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. For exactly 10 seconds, nothing happened. The galaxy watched, waited, wondered if the whole thing had been a bluff after all. Then every single Thranic military vessel simultaneously lost power. Not just main power. Reactors shut down, backup systems failed. Emergency reserves did not activate. 2,400 warships went completely dark. Ships that had been moving continued on momentum alone. Ships in orbit began to drift. The mighty Thranic fleet became nothing more than metal debris floating in space. On the Dominator's bridge, Emergency lights failed to activate. Officers shouted in confusion. Draken demanded answers. But the communication systems were dead. Everything was dead. The bridge was silent except for the sound of Thranic warriors breathing in sudden darkness. Then exactly 48 seconds after the power failed, it came back. Reactors reactivated, systems rebooted, shields flickered back to life. Weapons came back online. But everyone on every ship knew the truth. Something had reached into their vessels and turned them off. Remotely, simultaneously, effortlessly. And if whatever it was could turn them off, it could have destroyed them just as easily. Before anyone could react, before anyone could speak, every screen in Thranic space lit up with a message. Every communication system, every display, every data terminal. The message appeared simultaneously on military vessels, civilian stations, planetary networks, and personal devices. It was a list. Names, dates, locations, casualties. The list showed every Thranic military action for the past 300 years. Every battle, every conflict, every incident, and beside each one detailed records of civilian casualties. Treaty violations, war crimes. The list was hundreds of pages long. It was meticulously documented, every claim backed by sensor logs, testimony, intercepted communications. Evidence that had been quietly gathered over centuries. Humanity had been watching, recording, documenting everything. The list ended with one entry. The bright tomorrow date, 72 days ago. Location Sector 447. Civilian casualties, 15,000 perpetrators. Warlord Draken, Commander Theron Fleet, Admiral Zareth, Tactical Officer, Kryn Council ruling justified. Then came a new message, broadcast on all frequencies, in every galactic language. To the species of the galaxy, for 200 years we spoke. We negotiated. We asked for justice through proper channels. We believed in the system you created. The Galactic Council had one purpose, to prove that civilization could be built on law, not strength. That the weak could find protection through justice, not force. The Council failed. 15,000 of our people died. The Council called it justified. We asked for accountability. The Council refused. We understand the message this sends. We understand the system as it truly exists. The strong do as they wish. The weak suffer as they must. Words and laws mean nothing without the power to enforce them. Very well. You have chosen the rules. We will play by them. Draken stood on his bridge. The power had returned, but his hands trembled. For the first time in 400 years, Warlord Draken felt true fear. The message continued. The following individuals are responsible for ordering, executing, or covering up the massacre of the Bright Tomorrow Warlord Draken Commander Theron Fleet, Admiral Zareth Tactical Officer Kryn, and 18 others listed below. They will be turned over to human custody within 24 hours. These terms are not negotiable. They are not a request. They are what will happen. If the Thranic Empire complies, no further action will be taken. If they refuse, we will extract the individuals ourselves. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. You have 24 hours. This is not revenge. This is justice. We gave you 200 years to prove justice could be found through words. You failed. Now you will learn that justice one way or another will be done. The message ended. Silence fell across the galaxy. Billions of beings stared at their screens in shock. On the Dominator's bridge, Draken stood frozen. His name was on the list. He was being hunted by humans. By a species everyone had thought was weak. Sir, an officer said quietly, our sensors are detecting something. What? Ships, lots of ships. They are appearing all around Thranic space. Draken looked at the sensor display. His blood turned to ice. Red markers appeared everywhere. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Ships decloaking from stealth technology that made them invisible until they chose to be seen. The sensors counted automatically. 1,000, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. 3,000 human warships, surrounding all of Thranic space. Every major planet, every military installation, every trade route. They had been there the whole time. Invisible, watching, waiting. The human fleet outnumbered Thranic forces. But more than that, these were not civilian ships hastily armed for war. These were purpose-built warships. And the technology they displayed, stealth systems, remote shutdown capabilities, coordination across thousands of vessels, was far beyond what anyone thought humanity possessed. Draken realized with crushing certainty that humanity had not been hiding because they were weak. They had been hiding their strength because they had hoped never to use it. Now that hope was gone, and the galaxy was about to see what humanity had been holding back for 200 years. The countdown was over, but a new timeline had begun. 24 hours for the Thranics to comply. 24 hours to decide between surrender and annihilation. Marcus watched the human fleet appear on news broadcasts. 3,000 ships materializing like ghosts becoming solid. They were ready all along, he whispered. For 200 years they prepared for the day we failed them. And we did. We failed. Seraphine watched the same broadcasts. She saw the Thranic Empire frozen in shock. She saw other species scrambling to understand what was happening. And she saw those 3,000 human warships holding position. Not attacking, not threatening, just existing. Patient, inevitable. A promise of what would come if justice continued to be denied. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's silence. Now it was learning to fear something even more. Humanity's patience. 24 hours. The ultimatum hung over the Thranic Empire like a blade suspended by a thread. 3,000 human warships maintained their positions. They did not move. They did not threaten. They simply existed. Silent guardians watching over a galaxy that had forgotten what accountability meant. Warlord Draken stood in the war room beneath the surface of the Thranic homeworld. The chamber was carved from solid rock, reinforced with the strongest materials the Empire possessed. It had been built to survive planetary bombardment, to endure when everything else fell. Draken had commanded from this room for 3 centuries. He had planned the conquest of 47 worlds here. He had ordered the deaths of billions, all in the name of Thranic glory. Now he stood surrounded by his senior officers, warriors who had served him for decades, generals who had crushed rebellions, admirals who had shattered enemy fleets. They argued, shouted, demanded action. But beneath the bluster, Draken saw something he had never seen before in Thranic warriors. True fear. "We cannot simply hand over our warlord," Admiral Zareth roared, his scales flushed dark red with rage. "It would show weakness. Every enemy we have would smell blood." Zareth was 300 years old. He had commanded fleets since before humans had reached the stars. He was one of the officers named on the human list. His name sat beside Draken's. Condemned. "What enemies?" Commander Vexus asked quietly. Vexus was young by Thranic standards. Only 35 years old. But he had risen quickly through the ranks. He possessed something rare among Thranics, the ability to think beyond simple conquest. "The humans," Vexus continued. His voice was calm, measured. "We cannot even defend against the humans. 3,000 ships appeared from nowhere. They turned off our entire fleet like it was a child's toy. What other enemies matter compared to that? We have fought for 300 years to build this empire," another general protested. "We do not surrender because one species throws a tantrum." Vexus turned to face the general. His young eyes held depths of understanding that belied his age. "This is not a tantrum. This is an execution that has not happened yet. They are giving us a choice in how it proceeds." "Execution of whom?" Zareth demanded. "Of us," Vexus said simply. "Of the Empire. Maybe of our entire species." He pulled up a holographic display. It showed the human fleet positions. "Look at this. Really look at it. They have ships positioned at every major population center, every military base, every industrial complex. But they are not in attack positions. They are in containment positions. They have surrounded us completely." "So we break through," Zareth growled. "Break through with what?" Vexus asked. "They demonstrated they can shut down our ships remotely. Even if they could not, they outnumber us and have better technology. But here is what should truly terrify you." Vexus zoomed in on the display. "They are not trying to terrify us. There are no aggressive displays, no weapon tests, no threatening maneuvers. They are just waiting, like a surgeon waiting for the patient to be ready for the operation." The room fell silent. Officers exchanged glances. The young commander had put into words what they all felt but could not admit. "What are you saying?" Draken asked. His voice was quieter than anyone had heard it in decades. "I am saying they have already decided what will happen. The only question is whether we make it easy or hard. If we comply, they take the individuals responsible and leave. If we refuse, they will come and take them anyway. And they will destroy anything that gets in their way." Vexus paused. Not out of anger, not out of cruelty, simply because it is in the way. Another hour passed. The debate continued. Pride versus survival, honor versus pragmatism, empire versus existence. Finally, Draken himself spoke. His voice cut through the arguing like a blade. "Enough. The room fell silent instantly. 400 years of command presence filled those words. 400 years of absolute authority. This is my decision to make, Draken said. They want me. They want those of us who gave the orders. Warlord, Zareth began. They are right. The words seemed to cause Draken physical pain. His scales rippled with colors that indicated distress. His forearms hung at his sides. He suddenly looked old, tired. I gave the order to fire on the Bright tomorrow, Draken continued. I believed it was justified. I was wrong. You were following. I was wrong. Draken's roar shook the chamber. They were civilians, children, and I killed them because they were in space I claimed was mine. The humans asked for justice and we spat in their faces. Now they have come to collect, and you are all sitting here pretending we have a choice. He looked around at the officers named on the list. 22 warriors who had been part of the massacre. 22 soldiers who now face consequences for their actions. We can continue this farce, Draken said. We can refuse, we can order the fleet to fight, and every single Thranic warrior will die bravely and pointlessly. Or we can face what we have done and accept the consequences. You would surrender, Zareth asked. Disbelief filled his voice. You, Warlord Draken, would give yourself to the enemy. I would save our people from a war we cannot win. I would accept responsibility for my actions, and I would show the galaxy that Thranic warriors at least know honor when it is time to face it. Draken straightened to his full height, 3 meters of scaled muscle and hardened resolve. Send a message to the humans. We will comply. But I have one request. The message was sent. For 10 minutes, there was no response. Then a reply came back. Text only, like all human communications had been, brief and direct. You will stand trial. You will face the families of those you killed. You will be judged by your own laws and by ours. If found guilty, you will be imprisoned according to standards set by the Galactic Convention on Prisoners of War. Standards which we note the Thranic Empire signed but does not follow. Your imprisonment will be humane. You will not be tortured. You will not be executed. You will simply spend the remainder of your lives knowing what you did and accepting that actions have consequences. This is justice, not revenge. Draken read the message 3 times. He had expected death. He had expected torture. He had expected humans to do to him what he would have done to them. Instead, they promised a trial. Imprisonment under rules his own empire had agreed to, but ignored. They would not become monsters to punish monsters. Draken realized he had never understood humans at all. I will go, he said. His voice was steady now, resolved. The others named on the list will make their own choices, but I will go. One by one, the other officers agreed. What choice did they have, pride or survival? In the end, survival won. The Thranic government sent their formal acceptance. They would comply with all of humanity's demands. The individuals responsible would be turned over. No resistance, no tricks. Humanity's response was immediate. Acknowledged. A transfer shuttle will arrive at your capital in 2 hours. The individuals listed should be ready for transport. Bring no weapons, no guards, no tricks, just the ones we asked for. If everyone cooperates, this will end peacefully. 2 hours later, a single human shuttle descended through the Thranic homeworld's atmosphere. It was small, unarmed. It carried only a pilot and 2 security officers. The shuttle landed in the capital city's main plaza. Millions of Thranic citizens had gathered to watch. They stood in silence, witnessing the impossible. Their invincible empire brought to its knees without a single shot fired. Draken walked toward the shuttle. Behind him came the other 21 individuals on humanity's list. They wore no armor. They carried no weapons. They walked with heads held high, trying to maintain dignity in surrender. The human security officers stood at the shuttle's ramp. They were not large by Thranic standards. They did not look impressive or frightening. They simply stood there, calm, professional, watching the war criminals approach. When Draken reached the ramp, he stopped. He looked at the human officer, a woman with short, dark hair, brown eyes that had seen too much. She was perhaps 40 years old. She wore the insignia of a fleet captain. I am Warlord Draken, he said. His translator rendered his growls into human speech. I am responsible for the deaths of 15,000 of your people. I am here to face justice. The human officer nodded once. Her face showed no emotion, no triumph, no satisfaction, just professional acknowledgement of facts. We know who you are, she said. Please board the shuttle. You will not be harmed during transport. Draken had expected speeches, declarations, some statement of victory, But there was nothing, just simple, direct instruction. "That is all," he asked. "No words about what we have done." The officer's eyes met his. "What would be the point? You know what you did. We know what you did. The galaxy knows what you did. Words will not change facts." Draken boarded the shuttle. The others followed. Within minutes, the shuttle lifted off and climbed back toward space, where a human ship waited to take them to whatever fate awaited. The galaxy watched this happen. The mighty warlord Draken, commander of Thranic forces, conqueror of 47 worlds, surrendering without a fight, being taken into custody by two human security officers as if he were a common criminal, because that is what he was, and everyone knew it. But the Thranic High Command was not done making mistakes. Admiral Theron John had not boarded the shuttle. He had hidden instead, refusing to surrender, and he had convinced a small faction of loyalists to help him. "This is cowardice," Theron broadcast to the Thranic fleet. "We are warriors. We do not bow to threats. I am taking command of the Third Fleet. We will show humanity what it means to challenge the Thranic Empire." The Third Fleet consisted of 200 warships. It was a significant force. Under Theron's command, they broke formation and began moving toward the nearest human vessels. On the human command ship, Absolute Zero Fleet Admiral Sarah Mitchell watched the Thranic ships approach. She was 56 years old, gray streaked heavily through her dark hair. Deep lines marked her face. She had commanded human fleets for 26 years. She had hoped never to use them in anger. That hope had died 3 months ago when the bright tomorrow burned. "Thranic vessels are powering weapons," her tactical officer reported. The officer was a young man, perhaps 30 years old. His voice was calm, professional. He had been trained well. "Warn them," Mitchell ordered. Her voice carried the weight of decades of command. A message was broadcast. "Thranic Third Fleet, you are in violation of the agreed terms. Power down immediately and return to position. This is your only warning." The Thranic ships did not respond. They continued to accelerate. 4 minutes to weapons range. Mitchell sighed, a sound of tired resignation. "All ships implement Protocol 7, non-lethal suppression. I want those vessels disabled, not destroyed. Minimal casualties." "Yes, Admiral," the tactical officer acknowledged. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human fleet moved with a precision that seemed impossible. 3,000 ships acting as one organism. They did not rush to meet the Thranic attack. They simply repositioned. Slight adjustments, small movements. But within 90 seconds, the Thranic Third Fleet found itself surrounded. The Thranic ships opened fire. Particle beams and missiles launched toward human vessels. The human shields flickered as they absorbed the impacts. But no human ship was destroyed. No human ship even took significant damage. Then the humans returned fire, but they did not use their main weapons. Instead, they deployed something else. Specialized electromagnetic pulses, perfectly calibrated to overload Thranic shield generators without destroying the ships themselves. One by one, Thranic ships found their shields failing. Then their weapons went offline. Then their engines shut down. Within 6 minutes of the first shot being fired, all 200 Thranic vessels were drifting helplessly. The humans had disabled an entire fleet without killing a single crew member. Admiral Mitchell opened a channel to Theron's flagship. "Admiral Theron, your fleet is disabled. You have 2 choices. Surrender now, or we will begin boarding your vessels and taking you by force. Choose quickly." On the Thranic flagship, Theron stared at his screens in disbelief. His entire fleet, gone in 6 minutes, without the humans even breaking formation or appearing to try very hard. Vexus had been right. Humanity had already decided what would happen. The Thranics had just been allowed to choose how difficult they wanted to make it. "I surrender," Theron said quietly. "Say again, Admiral." Mitchell's voice came through the speakers. "I surrender," Theron shouted. "You have won! Come and take me!" Human boarding parties were dispatched, small teams that moved through Thranic ships with practiced efficiency. They secured weapons. They escorted Theron and his conspirators to shuttles. They left the crews alive and unharmed, just stripped of their ability to cause more trouble. Within 2 hours, it was over. The Third Fleet sat disabled but intact. Theron and his loyalists were in custody. Not a single life had been lost on either side. The galaxy watched in awe and horror. Humanity had just defeated 200 warships without killing anyone. That level of control, that level of precision, it was unprecedented. More importantly, it sent a message. Humanity could have destroyed the Third Fleet. They could have killed everyone aboard in retaliation for the attack. But they chose not to. They chose to prove they could defeat the enemy without becoming like the enemy. Marcus watched the footage from his neutral station. Tears ran down his face. His skin flushed with complex emotions his species had no names for. "Do you see," he said to his wife, "do you see what they are? They are killers who choose not to kill, warriors who choose mercy even in battle. This is what the galaxy should have understood." Unconquered Prime Council Director Archon sat in his private quarters. He watched the same footage. He had been director of the Galactic Council for 50 years. He had prided himself on maintaining order and justice. But he had failed when it truly mattered. When 15,000 civilians died and humanity asked for justice, he had chosen politics over principle. Now humanity was showing the galaxy what real justice looked like. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the calm, patient application of consequences for actions. Archon typed out a message. It was his resignation from the council. He could not in good conscience continue leading an institution that had failed so completely. The Thranic homeworld prepared for occupation. Civilians evacuated major cities. Resistance fighters prepared to defend their homes. Everyone expected humanity to invade, to conquer, to crush the empire that had defied them. Instead, Admiral Mitchell broadcast another message. This one went to the people of the Thranic Empire. Not the government, not the military, the people themselves. Your government has surrendered those responsible for the massacre of the Bright Tomorrow. Your military has been neutralized. You are now at our mercy. Here is what we will do with that power. Nothing. The word hung in the air. Nothing. After all the fear, all the preparation, nothing. Mitchell continued, "We are not here to conquer you. We are not here to enslave you. We are here only to ensure justice is done and prevent future atrocities. Your government must be dissolved as agreed. New elections will be held under neutral oversight. We will monitor to ensure fairness, but we will not interfere. The Thranic people will choose their own future." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We will maintain a presence in your space for one standard year, not as conquerors, as peacekeepers. Any attempt at military buildup will be stopped. Any threat to civilian populations will be met with immediate intervention. But if you choose peace, if you choose to rebuild your society on better foundations, we will not stand in your way. In 1 year, we will withdraw. What you do after that is your choice. But know this, we will be watching, always. And if you ever again attack civilians, if you ever again commit the crimes your old government committed, we will return. And next time, we will not be so gentle." Mitchell's face filled the screens across Thranic space, lined with age and experience, eyes that had seen too much, voice that carried absolute certainty. This is not occupation. This is transition. Use this time wisely. The Thranic people expecting conquest instead got a chance at redemption. It was more than most of them thought they deserved. Across the galaxy, species that had been enemies of the Thranics for centuries prepared to take advantage of their weakness. Predators smelling blood. Old grudges waiting to be settled. But every time a fleet moved toward Thranic space, they found human ships waiting. The message was always the same. Turn back. The Thranics are under protection while they rebuild. Come back in 1 year if you still want war. Most turned back. A few tried to push through. The Corax Dominion had attacked a human mining colony 2 years ago, killed 300 workers. The council had ruled it a territorial dispute. No punishment. When the Corax tried to enter Thranic space to claim compensation, 3 human ships intercepted them. The Corax fleet of 50 vessels opened fire without warning. The battle lasted 3 minutes. All 50 Corax ships were destroyed. Not disabled. Destroyed. Because the Corax had learned nothing. They had chosen aggression. And humanity had shown them the difference between mercy for those who surrendered and annihilation for those who continued to attack. The Drell Syndicate had been sabotaging human trade routes for years. Small acts, plausible deniability. The Council had investigated but found insufficient evidence. When the Drell tried to establish new trade agreements after humanity's display of force, they found themselves completely isolated. No species would trade with them. Their economy collapsed within weeks. Humanity had not fired a shot. They had simply made it clear that cooperation with humanity's enemies had consequences. The Voron Collective, on the other hand, had been one of the first species to offer cooperation after the Bright Tomorrow massacre. They had provided evidence against the Thranics. They had offered humanitarian aid. Now the Voron economy boomed. Trade with humanity increased by 40%. Technology sharing programs began. Diseases that had plagued the Voron for centuries were cured with human medical knowledge. The pattern became clear across the galaxy. Resist humanity and face swift consequences. Cooperate with humanity and prosper beyond imagination. On the human prison vessel, Hope of Better Days, Draken sat in his cell. The cell was clean, 10 meters square. A bed, a desk, a viewport showing stars. He was given food and medical care. He was not tortured or abused. He was simply held accountable. Every day he was required to watch video testimony from survivors of the bright tomorrow. Families who lost children, children who lost parents, people whose entire lives had been destroyed by his order. It was the most effective punishment humanity could have devised. Not pain, just truth. The weight of what he had done shown to him over and over until he could never escape it. On the 50th day of his imprisonment, Draken asked to speak. A human guard brought him to an interview room. A human official sat across from him. The official was perhaps 50 years old. Graying hair, tired eyes. A man who had seen too much. "I want to speak," Draken said. His voice was quieter than it had been in centuries. "To the families? To apologize. I know it will not change anything, but I need them to know that I understand. I was wrong. I thought strength was enough. I thought their lives mattered less than my orders. I was wrong." The official studied him for a long moment. "We will arrange it, but understand many of them will not forgive you. Many will hate you until you die. Apology does not erase what you did." "I know," Draken said, "but I need to try. Even if it changes nothing, I need to try." The human official nodded slowly. "That is more than most war criminals manage. We will arrange it." Humanity had not just defeated their enemy. They were trying to redeem him. Not because he deserved it, but because they believed even monsters could learn to be better. 6 months passed. The galaxy began to adapt to its new reality. In Thranic space, the transformation was remarkable. New elections had been held under neutral oversight. The new government was smaller, less militaristic, focused on rebuilding rather than conquering. Commander Vexus, who had predicted humanity's nature so accurately, had been elected to lead the new Thranic Council. He was 36 years old now, young for such responsibility. But his people needed new leadership. Leadership that understood the galaxy had changed. Vexus's first act was to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, to investigate and document all of the old empire's crimes. "We must face what we were," he told his people in his inaugural address. "We must understand what we did. Only then can we become something better. The humans gave us a chance to change. We must not waste it." The human peacekeeping force watched and documented, but did not interfere. They were there to prevent violence, not to dictate politics. Seraphine had returned to Concord Prime. She had been appointed as the new council director after Archon's resignation. She was younger than most directors, only 45, but the galaxy needed fresh leadership. Marcus had been appointed as the council's official advisor on human affairs, a new position created because the council finally realized they needed someone who understood humanity. Together, they watched the galaxy transform. Species that had been preparing for war now sought negotiation. Pirates disappeared from trade routes. Border conflicts decreased dramatically. The human fleet maintained a quiet presence, not dominating, not controlling, just watching. And that was enough. Tomorrow, the council would vote on a proposal to officially recognize humanity as guardians of the galaxy, to formalize the role they had taken upon themselves. "Do you think it will pass?" Seraphine asked Marcus as they stood in her office looking out at the stars. "It should," Marcus said. His skin shifted through thoughtful colors. "But some species still fear what humanity might become." "And you, what do you think?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I think humanity is what they have always been, a species that knows darkness but chooses light, that understands fear but acts with courage, that possesses the power to destroy but chooses to protect instead." He turned to face Seraphine. "I think the galaxy is lucky they chose to be guardians, because they could have chosen to be conquerors, and no one could have stopped them." The vote was scheduled for the next day. The galaxy would decide whether to formally accept what everyone already knew. Humanity had become the guardians. The question was whether the council would acknowledge it. The council chamber filled with delegates from 847 species. The human section was no longer empty. 3 human representatives sat there, but they did not dominate discussions as they once had. They simply sat and watched, speaking only when necessary. Their words carried weight now. because everyone knew they were backed by 3,000 ships and the will to use them. The proposal was read to officially recognize humanity as guardians of the galaxy, to codify the role they had taken upon themselves. Debate followed. Some species argued for it, others against. The arguments were passionate. The stakes were clear. Elder Meraxis stood. She was the oldest being on the council, 900 years old. Her translucent skin glowed softly. She had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had witnessed the birth and death of empires. I have seen empires rise and fall, Meraxis said. Her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the chamber. I have watched species gain great power and lose themselves in it. I have witnessed what happens when strength is not tempered by wisdom. She looked at the human delegation. Humanity possesses strength beyond what most of us imagined. They could have used that strength to conquer, to rule, to reshape the galaxy in their image. But they chose differently. They chose to enforce the laws we created but lacked the power to maintain. They chose to protect those we failed to defend. A delegate from the Corvanus cluster stood. But what happens if humanity becomes what the Thranics were? What happens when the Guardians become tyrants? Marcus requested permission to speak. Seraphine granted it. I have studied humanity for 40 years, Marcus said. His blue skin was bright with a conviction. When the Thranics gained power, they used it immediately for conquest. When the Drell gained power, they used it for exploitation. He pulled up historical data. But humans have had this power for at least 6 months. What have they done with it? The displays showed the evidence. They ended the Thranic threat without genocide. They protected rebuilding enemies from predators. They shared technology with allies. They maintained order without claiming territory. Power reveals character, Marcus concluded. Humanity has revealed theirs. The debate continued for hours. Finally, Seraphine called for a vote. The results appeared on the central display. 7 in favor, 5 against. The proposal passed. Humanity was now officially recognized as guardians of the galaxy. In the quiet that followed, the human representative stood. Captain James Rivera was 48 years old. Gray streaked his hair at the temples. Lines marked his face. He had commanded ships for 23 years. May I request a recess? Rivera asked. There is something you should know, something we have kept private, but it is time for the truth. The chamber fell silent. Truth. That word carried weight when spoken by humans. Granted, Seraphine said. We will reconvene in 1 hour. When the session resumed, Rivera stood before the full council. Behind him, holographic displays activated. They showed something no one had seen before. An alien structure, massive beyond comprehension, built from materials that should not exist, floating in the void of deep space. 230 years ago, Rivera began, humans were expanding into deep space. We found something. Something left behind by a civilization far older than any of us. The displays shifted, showing more structures, weapons platforms, defensive installations, technology that made current galactic standards look primitive. We call them the architects, Rivera continued. We do not know what they looked like. We only know what they left behind. He pulled up translated records. The architects built an empire that spanned 3 galaxies. They achieved technological advancement we are only beginning to understand, and they were destroyed. The chamber held its collective breath. By something they called the void, Rivera said, it consumed entire star systems, devoured matter and energy. It was unstoppable. The architects built weapons to fight it, tools that could manipulate space-time, devices that could shut down enemy vessels remotely, stealth technology that bent light itself. Everything we have shown you, we learned from them. The revelation hit the council like a physical blow. Humanity's power was not their own, it was inherited. The architects died before they could use their weapons effectively. Rivera continued, the void consumed them, but their installations remained, hidden, waiting, and we found them. He looked around the chamber. We spent 50 years debating what to do. Some humans wanted to use the weapons for conquest. Others wanted to destroy everything we found, afraid of what we might become. In the end, we chose a middle path. We would study the technology. We would build defenses. But we would use it only for protection, only when words failed, only when justice could not be found through peaceful means. We hoped, Rivera said, that we would never need to use it, that the galaxy would prove capable of maintaining order through law. He looked directly at Seraphine. You were not, and so we stopped hoping, and we acted. Elder Meraxis spoke into the stunned silence. You could have told us this before. We could have, Rivera agreed, but revelation without proof is just boasting. We showed you who we are through actions, not claims. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species felt betrayed, others vindicated. All were shaken. Seraphine called for order. Captain Rivera, how did you finally decide? By asking what the architects would want, Rivera replied. They built these weapons to protect their civilization. They failed, but their tools survived. We decided to honor their purpose, to use what they built for the defense they died trying to achieve. Marcus stood, his skin was flushed with realization. The void, is it still out there? Rivera was quiet, then nodded. Yes, the architect's final records show it moving through the intergalactic void, growing. One day it may turn its attention back to this galaxy. How long? Seraphine asked. We do not know. Decades, centuries, maybe millennia, but it will come. And when it does, the galaxy will need to stand united. The weight of that revelation settled over the council. That is why we accept the role of guardian, Rivera said. Not because we want power, but because someone must prepare. Someone must ensure that when the void returns, this galaxy is ready. The session ended. The galaxy had learned a truth that changed everything. Humanity's power had a purpose. A threat was coming, and the guardians they had just accepted might be all that stood between civilization and annihilation. After the session, Seraphine found Rivera standing on an observation deck. He looked out at the stars. You do not look happy, Seraphine observed. Rivera smiled without humor. We just accepted responsibility for protecting a galaxy that did not want us until fear forced their hand. Is that so different from your own history? No, Rivera admitted. Humans have always been reactive. We wait until crisis forces action. He turned to face her. I have a request, a delegation to visit Earth, to see where humanity comes from, to understand what shaped us. I will arrange it, Seraphine said. Soon, Rivera said, before politics makes everything complicated again. 6 weeks later, a delegation of council members boarded a human transport vessel. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. They passed colony worlds where millions of humans lived, research stations studying phenomena, trade hubs connecting human territory. Everywhere they saw the quiet competence that defined humanity. Ships that ran on time, stations that functioned efficiently, systems that worked because humans made them work. Seraphine stood on the observation deck as Earth came into view, a blue and white marble, smaller than many homeworlds, but beautiful. 3 billion years, Rivera said, standing beside her. That is how long life has existed on that world. Humans have existed for perhaps 300,000 years. We have been in space for less than 500. He smiled. By galactic standards, we are children. But we are children who learn from our mistakes faster than most. The ship descended to Central Park, a green space in a massive city. Admiral Mitchell waited for them. She had retired from active command after the Thranic peacekeeping mission. She was 57 years old now, gray-haired and dignified. Welcome to Earth, Mitchell said. Welcome to where we come from. She led them through the park to a memorial wall. It stretched 50 meters long, carved from black granite, and on it were names, 15,000 names, every human who died on the bright tomorrow. Seraphine approached the wall slowly. Her fingers traced one of the names, Sarah Chen, age 7. Beneath the name was a small photograph, a child smiling. We built this memorial 3 months after the massacre, Mitchell said. Her voice was thick with emotion. Before we stopped talking, before we took action, we built it so we would never forget why we did what we did. She gestured to the names. These people were not soldiers. They were families seeking a new home, children dreaming of new worlds. And they were murdered because the council decided their lives had less value than political convenience. Mitchell turned to face the delegation. Tears ran down her face. She made no effort to hide them. This is why we stopped talking. This is why we took the power the architects left us and used it. Because if we did not, then these names meant nothing. Beside the memorial stood another figure. Draken. The old warlord stood in restraints. Human guards flanked him. He was here on supervised release, required to visit the memorial. Draken approached the wall slowly. His forearms hung at his sides. His scaled face showed expressions Thranics rarely revealed. Shame, grief, regret. He knelt before the wall, a Thranic gesture of absolute submission. I did this, Draken said. His voice carried across the quiet park. I gave the order. I killed these people. I thought they did not matter. I was wrong. He looked at the delegation. The humans could have killed me, could have tortured me, but they showed me this instead. They showed me the truth of what I did, and it is a harsher punishment than any pain. Vexus stepped forward from the delegation. I am Commander Vexus. I lead the new Thranic government. I speak for the Thranic people when I say we are sorry. We cannot undo what was done, but we can try to be better. Mitchell studied him, then nodded slowly. That is all anyone can do. Try to be better. Learn from mistakes. She gestured to the city beyond. That is what we did. For 10,000 years, humans killed each other. We perfected warfare. We built weapons that could end our species, and we nearly used them. But we chose to stop, to learn, to be better. And now we use that knowledge not to conquer others, but to prevent the mistakes we made. Marcus approached the memorial wall. I never truly understood, he said quietly. I knew the facts, but I did not understand what they meant to you. Now you do, Rivera said. This is what was at stake. This is what the council failed to protect. This is why we did what we did. The delegation stood in silence before the memorial. 847 species, thousands of years of combined history, all humbled by 15,000 names on a wall. Elder Meraxas spoke. The galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Mitchell shook her head. Do not repay. Pay forward. Teach others what you learned here. Show them that strength without wisdom is just violence waiting to happen. As the sun set over Earth, Rivera stood before the delegation one final time. You asked us to be guardians, Rivera said. We accepted, but understand what that means. It means we will enforce the laws you create. We will protect the weak from the strong. We will ensure that what happened to the bright tomorrow never happens again. But it also means you must trust us. You must accept that sometimes we will act without asking permission, because guardianship is not democracy. It is responsibility. He paused. If you cannot accept that, tell us now. We will return to our space. We will build our defenses, and you will face the void alone when it comes. No one spoke. The choice was made. As the delegation prepared to leave Earth, Seraphine found Mitchell once more. Do you ever regret it? Seraphine asked. The silence, the display of force. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. Every day. But I regret what came before more. I regret that we talked for 200 years and no one listened until we stopped talking. She looked at the memorial, at the names glowing softly in the twilight. These people deserve justice. They deserve to be protected by the laws the council claimed to uphold. And when those laws failed, someone had to show that failure has consequences. So no, I do not regret what we did. I regret that we had to do it. 1 year later, the galaxy looked different. 18 species had joined the defensive alliance humanity proposed. Trade between member species increased 60%. Conflicts decreased by 90%. Species that had resisted cooperation now sought membership. Species that had attacked civilians now faced isolation and economic collapse. Marcus published a book. He called it The Silent Century. It documented 200 years of humanity talking and 1 year of silence that changed everything. The book became required reading in diplomatic academies across the galaxy. Draken served supervised release for 2 years, then was granted conditional freedom. He spent 5 years teaching at the new Thranic Military Academy, teaching young warriors that true strength was knowing when not to fight. When Draken died at 407 years old, humans attended his funeral, because he had proven that even monsters could choose redemption. Vexus led the Thranic people for 30 years. He built a government based on cooperation rather than conquest, an economy based on trade rather than tribute, a military designed to defend rather than attack. The human fleet maintained its vigilance. 3,000 ships spread across the galaxy, watching, protecting. And in the deep darkness between galaxies, something ancient stirred. The void sensed new life, new energy. It began to turn its attention back toward the Milky Way. Slowly, inevitably. But this time the galaxy would be ready, united, prepared, led by a species that knew how to turn ancient weapons into modern shields. 2.5 years after the silence broke on the observation deck of the flagship Eternal Vigilance fleet, Admiral Sarah Mitchell stood one last time. She was 59 years old, ready to retire for good. Captain Rivera joined her. He was 50 years old now, gray-haired and weathered. He would take command when she left. Do you think we made the right choice, Rivera asked, taking on this burden? Mitchell looked out at the stars. I think we made the only choice we could live with. We had the power, we had the knowledge, And we had seen what happens when those with power do nothing while innocents die. She smiled. The galaxy may not love us for what we did, but they are safer because we did it. That is enough. Rivera nodded. And when the void comes, then we will show it what the architects could not. That life is stronger than entropy, that civilization is more powerful than chaos, and that when species stand together, nothing in the universe can break them. Mitchell turned to leave, paused, looked back at Rivera. One more thing. Remember why we did this. Remember the bright tomorrow. Remember that our purpose is not power, it is protection. I will, Rivera promised. Good, then the galaxy is in good hands. Mitchell left the bridge for the last time, walking away from command, but knowing the work would continue. The watch would be maintained, because humanity had learned a lesson that changed everything. The strongest thing in the universe was not the power to destroy, it was the choice not to use it. And as long as that lesson was remembered, as long as that choice was honored, the galaxy would endure. The stars shone in the darkness. Billions of suns, trillions of worlds, countless lives depended on the choices made by those with power. And watching over them all, silent guardians who had learned that sometimes the greatest victory is the battle you never have to fight. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's silence, but in time it learned something else, to trust it. Because when humanity stopped talking, they proved that actions speak louder than words, that justice is more than ideals, and that the best guardians are those who never wanted the job, but accepted it anyway. The bright tomorrow's 15,000 had not died in vain. They had become the reason a trillion lives now slept safely, and in the end, that was the memorial they deserved.